All right, my lovely wife. We are here ready to start book number 4. And book 4 is titled The Shadow Rising. And as we left off, Rand had finally accepted the fact that he is indeed the Dragon Reborn. And he, by himself, with the aid of Callandor, Asa Angriel, killed Ishmael. The girls have decided, Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve, that they are going to continue hunting the Black Ajah. Mat half saying he's going to keep helping everyone, half saying he just wants to leave. And Perrin and Fail, well, we didn't really see them at the end, now did we? And so, we start a new journey with no prologue, Seeds of Shadow, Chapter 1. And I don't know if I've really talked about this, but every Wheel of Time book starts with the same line. And I'm just going to read the quick line. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose on the great plain called the Caroline Grass. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. We join Min on the Caroline Grass, having finally, after a very long journey, arrived in Tar Valon. Moraine gave Min a message for the Amyrlin and said, "Don't let anyone know you're there." And so Min, in a great departure of her normal way of being, is wearing a pretty little dress and grew out her hair. Because if you recall, she likes to wear a coat and breeches like a boy. She's a tomboy, right, with her short hair and everything. But she's also going by Elmendrida, which is her full name, because she knows that no one will recognize her by that. She finds one of the Accepted of the White Tower, someone she knew from her last visit as Min, but the Accepted does not recognize her. Min demands to speak to the Amyrlin, since everyone has that right to demand an audience with her. And as she is being led to the Amyrlin, she sees 3 Aes Sedai, each with an aura around them. Now, Min doesn't see auras and symbols above everybody with her power, but Aes Sedai do often have it. But the content of these made her pause. Every one of those 3's auras indicated that they will all die, and on the same day. What could possibly kill 3 Aes Sedai at once? She's shaken, but she continues on. She sees in the hallway Shiriam, the mistress of novices, and sees an aura above her, that on the same day many of the people in the tower will die. Shiriam will be hurt. She sees symbols around many Aes Sedai and warders as they go, and sees the symbol of death above many. Min runs into Gawain, Elaine's brother, one of her brothers, and he's asking, "Where's Elaine? Where's Egwene?" Oh, and Nynaeve. But she's more like an afterthought. He's very interested in his sister Elaine, but also Egwene, having maybe a bit of a crush on her, to be honest. But the Amyrlin won't tell him anything. She says they're on a farm serving a penance. And Min sees an aura of him. And she sees a white boar on a green background, which is a different aura than the red one of Andor. Well, Min assures them that they're safe, but that she doesn't know anymore, and she goes to see the Amyrlin. Leanne, the Keeper, which is basically the secretary for the Amyrlin, recognizes Min despite the disguise, but sends her along anyway. And when Min goes to see Siuan, she sees an aura of her laying naked on the ground, and has a sense something else is wrong with this picture, as if that weren't bad enough, but she can't explain it. And the Amerlin just laughs, saying, maybe I take a man into my bed. You don't know my life." And Min starts telling her about all these visions she's been having of people, and Suan admits the Black Ajahs in the tower, and that could be related. Min then shares the message from Moraine that Rand is traveling to Tyr. Because if you recall, Min wasn't with them in Tyr. Min left when they were at the very beginning of the last book, when Moraine sent her away. And so Min's been traveling on her own for months. She doesn't know anything about it after Rand went away. But they know that he was going to Tyr. And Suan gets angry, saying it's too soon for him to go there. And she also gets out of Min that Min is apparently in love with Rand, and that Min wants to go to Tyr to be with him. But Suan has other plans. She says, "No, you're not leaving here, Elmindrida. You're going to stay here, and you're going to help me figure out who the Black Ajah are, either with your visions above people, or just as bait for the Black Ajah." Min doesn't like this, but feels trapped between a rock and a hard place. We switch to Elaida's point of view, the Red Ajah Aes Sedai, who was the previous advisor to Queen Morghese of Andor, Elaine's mom, right? And Elaida recognizes Min, despite the disguise. It doesn't seem to be working on the people that really matter, does it? And she starts thinking, the Amerlin is hiding stuff. She probably knows the whereabouts of those 3 runaways, and Moraine and Suan were friends. Elaida thinks to herself, no one else would probably even remember that those 2 girls used to be friends so many years ago, but she thinks they are related. She thinks back to her vision in the first book, where something is very important about this Rand al'Thor, and she thinks Moraine and Suan are plotting to manipulate that boy. And she believes that Rand is going to destroy the royal line of Andor, and she is the only one to stop it. And after all, Elaida has the gift of foretelling, the ability to tell the future. And she had a foretelling that the royal line of Andor is the key to winning the last battle. And then she has an epiphany. What if Rand al'Thor can channel? Maybe that is the reason for this secrecy from us. She meets up with Alviarin, a sister of the White Ajah, and together they start planning on how to stop Suan. We switch to the viewpoint of Dane Bornhold, one of the children of the light. Dane Bornhold is in Terran Ferry, in the 2 rivers. It seems the White Cloaks have gone to the 2 rivers, for some reason. And he has delivered a message from Ordeith. If you recall, Ordeith was mentioned only once in the previous book. He was in the ear of Pedron Nial, the commander of the Children of the Light, telling him things about Rand al'Thor, about how Rand al'Thor is a dark friend. And it is not directly stated as far as I remember, but I believe it is already very heavily implied to a point where the reader should know. Ordeith is Paden Fane, who is taking on another name. Bornhold believes Ordeith to be quite insane, but he has orders to listen to Ordeith from the Lord Captain Commander himself. But Bornhold doesn't care about Ordeith or his vendettas. He cares only about one thing, avenging the death of his father by killing the dark friend Perrin Aybara. We then switch to the final viewpoint of Surath of the Seanchan. Lady Surath has taken over an island as a ruler, and a lot of the sea folk have been taken hostage by her, so no one can tell the mainland that the Seanchan are still here. 6 months, it's indicated that 6 months have passed since the Seanchan were driven from Falme. So that means 6 months have passed since the end of Book 2. Surath starts questioning a Da'Main, who was named Pura, but is indicated to be a captured Aes Sedai. And she wants to know, how do the Aes Sedai control this dragon reborn? She knows that people on the mainland say Aes Sedai do not have the ability to lie. After all, Damain have been told to say something simple like a black cloth is white, and even though they were punished beyond reason for not admitting to it, they could potentially just be holding back still. So while she's doubtful of the fact that the Aes Sedai cannot lie, she does still try to, she does still ask. But the lady doesn't really say because she doesn't know. Poor Pyrrha. And so they're dismissed. And Surath starts talking about a secret that only her and 3 others know. But we don't get a true indication of what secret she's referring to. But regardless, Surath comes to a decision. To be the one who captured this dragon, whether he's false or real, along with the means of controlling his power, that person would get great honor from the Empress of Seanchan. But, she wonders to herself, when I take him, do I give him to the Empress? That is the question. A question that she dares never voice aloud. Chapter 2 is titled Whirlpools in the Pattern. So, Book 4 is very Perrin heavy, and I'm debating how deep into the Perrin sections we want to go, because I know he's your favorite, and I know you're interested in the romance portions and stuff. So I'm going to do my best to not just read the Perrin sections, but some of their conversations, like, I worry that you'll miss out on a lot of the nuances of their conversations and the development of their relationship, right? So, like, Perrin and Fail are now together, but that didn't just happen, like, quickly, like, they hate each other, they're okay with each other, they like each other. Like, it was a pretty well done progression over the course of the last book and this one. So you're going to miss out on a lot of those reasonings, but I'm happy to talk about them another time, so I'll do my best. We join Perrin and Fail in the Stone of Tyr, and they have a room kind of on one of the servant levels, and Fail is walking back and forth, irritated. As she basically paces back and forth in the room, Perrin scratches his 2-week-old beard irritably. Fail says, "It suits you," right as Perrin thinks for the 100th time of shaving, and Perrin's like, quietly, he's like, "It itches." But Fail is just like, "It looks right on you." And Perrin just sighs, and he's like, "I know I'm gonna put off shaving again, aren't I?" in his head. And then he's like, "I wish Mat were here. He'd know how to handle girls right now." But she keeps pacing, and Perrin sees that. And he's thinking like, her father must deeply regret her leaving home. I mean, Fail told him that her father is the biggest fur trader in the country of Saldea. And that probably is why she's so good at getting what she wants every time, including his beard. She's a good negotiator by blood. But he asks her, "Something's troubling you, Fail, and it isn't my beard. What?" And Fail basically admits, "This room is beneath you." And she's like, "You deserve better than this. You deserve it. You know that boy Mat has better." And you kind of get, like, the simplicity of the room we're in is irritating her because she feels like Perrin is being disrespected. But Perrin asked for this room, and he tells her, "Mat's the one that likes gaudy things, not me." And she's like, "You don't stand up for yourself." And she's like, "The Lord Dragon seems to not even be interested in you anymore. All he cares about is talking with the High Lords." And Rand's like, "The Lord Dragon? His name is Rand." And Fail's like, "He's your friend, not mine, if a man like that even has friends." And then she says, "I've been thinking about leaving the stone and Tyr. I don't think Moiraine would stop me anymore." And Perrin just sighs and says, "I don't think she would either." And Fail looks at him, plants her hands on his fists and stares at him and says, "Is that all you have to say?" And Perrin says, "What do you want me to say? That I want you to stay?" And there's anger in his voice that kind of startles him. But he realizes he's angry with himself, not her. And he thinks again, it's so easy to hurt others when you don't think things through. And so he takes a breath and tries to calm down. He's like, I want you to stay, Fail, but maybe you should leave. I'm not calling you a coward, but the Dragon Reborn and the Forsaken? And she's like, stay? Anything's better than sitting here like a boulder, but... And then she kind of kneels in front of him and rests her hands on his knees and says, Perrin, I don't like wondering when one of the Forsaken is going to walk around the corner in front of me, and I don't like wondering when the Dragon Reborn is going to kill us all. He did it in the breaking, after all, killed everyone that was close to him. And Perrin immediately jumps to his defense, saying, Rand is not Lews Therin Kinslayer. I mean, he is the dragon, but he's not... He wouldn't... And he just didn't know how to finish the sentence. Because Perrin knows there's a spark of truth in that. He is Lews Therin Telamon reborn. That's what being the Dragon Reborn meant. But did that mean that Rand was doomed to the same fate? Not just going mad, because any man who channeled had that in front of him, but a rotting death killing everyone who cared for him? And Fail then says, I've been talking to Bane and Shayad, Perrin. Bane and Shayad are two of the Aiel women, Spear Sisters, and they've been quite troublesome to Perrin ever since she seemed to make friends with them. Bane and Shayad they told me Moiraine asks where you are in Mat-a-Lot. And that means Moiraine doesn't know where you are all the time, which means we could get away. You should come with me. And Perrin's like, I can't. And he tries to kiss her, but she leaps to her feet and backs away so fast he nearly falls on his face. And she crosses her arms, like, angrily, and she's like, don't tell me you're afraid of her. I know she has Aes Sedai and has you all dancing when she twitches the strings. Maybe she has Rand so tight he can't get loose, and the light knows Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve that don't want to, but you could break their cords if you tried. And Perrin's like, it's not anything to do with Moiraine, it's what I have to do. And she's like, don't you dare hand me any of that hairy-chested drivel about a man to doing his duty. I know duty just as well as you, and you don't have a duty here. You're ta'veren, even if I don't see it, but he's the Dragon Reborn, not you. And Perrin jumps up and says, will you listen? And he yells. He's never shouted at her before, and she raises her chin and stiffs her shoulders but doesn't say a word. And then he says, I think I'm part of Rand's destiny somehow. Mat too. I think he can't do what he has to do unless we do our part. That is my duty. I cannot walk away if it means Rand will fail. And she's like, might? Did Moiraine tell you this? And he's like, I worked it out myself. And Perrin shares a theory. He says, I think ta'veren are pulled towards each other. Or maybe Rand pulls Mat and I. I mean, Rand's supposed to be the strongest ta'veren since Arthur Hawkwing. Maybe the strongest since the breaking of the world. Mat won't admit he's ta'veren, but as much as he keeps trying to get away and leave the stone, he always ends up coming back to Rand. I mean, look at it. He was over in Tar Valon and Caemlyn, and he still ended up in the same city as Rand. And Loial says he's never even heard of 3 ta'veren, let alone 3 of the same age and from the same place. And she's like, Loial doesn't know everything. He's not that old for an Ogier. And Perrin's like, he's over 90. And then she kind of sighs and says, poor Perrin. I left Saldea to find adventure, and now that I'm in one, all I want to do is go somewhere else. But you want to be a blacksmith, and you're going to end up in the stories whether you want to or not. And Perrin looks away, but he can still smell her herbal soap that she uses. He likes the smell. He goes to the wall that has his axe and his hammer leaning against it, but he picks up the hammer, and just because there's something comfortable about it, and he says, Master Luhan, my blacksmith master back in the Two Rivers, says you can't always walk away at what needs to be done. And he asks Fail, are you leaving? And she's like, I don't know. This is a fine mess you put me in. Perrin's like, what'd I do? And Fail's like, well, if you don't know, I'm certainly not going to tell you. And Perrin just scratches his head in confusion, and he's like, Matt would probably know exactly what she meant right now. And Perrin thinks to himself, Fail's the only woman that he wants, but sometimes he feels like a fish trying to understand a bird. Perrin's head whips around when he hears a grating sound and a thump. His axe toppled to the floor. He's wondering what could have caused that when it shifted on its own, untouched, and the axe leaped straight for Perrin's throat. Quickly, he swings his hammer, metal on metal, overpowering the sound of Fail's scream, and the axe flew across the room, but rebounded and darted back towards him again with the blade and towards his throat. The axe then goes towards Fail instead, and Fail grabs the haft of the axe with both hands, but it twists in her grip, slashing towards her face. But Perrin drops his hammer and seizes the axe just before the half-moon blade reaches her flesh. He knows he would die if his own axe harmed her in any way. He jerks the axe so fast away from her, the point on the other end of it nearly stabs himself. The weapon is thrashing around like it has a malevolent will. It wanted Perrin, and it fought him with some sort of cunning. His arms started aching from the strength of it, sweat rolling down his face, and he's thinking, this is madness, just madness. And he quickly says through gritted teeth, "Get out of the room, Fail." And she's like, "I will not leave you." And he says, "It'll kill both of us." And she says, "No." And growling, he lets go with one of his hands with the axe and thrusts Fail away, pushes her, and as he wrestles her towards the door, ignoring her shouts and her fists pounding at him. And he opens the door and pushes her out with his shoulder, and then not locks it, but slams it when the big latch closes so she can't get back in, even as she pounds against it from the outside of the door, shouting. And Perrin looks at the axe and says, "Just you and me now. Blood and ashes, how I hate you." And he thinks to himself as he laughs hysterically, Rand's the one supposed to go mad, and here I am talking to an axe. Rand, burn him. The axe dives towards him again, and Perrin twists his body with a heavy thunk. The blade buries itself inside the door that he just closed. And he doesn't know how else to describe it, but he feels the life leave the weapon, and he takes his hand away, understanding it's only steel and wood again. He opens the door, and Fail is there, her hands in the air, as if she froze in her beating of the door, and she touches the tip of her nose and quietly says, "Another inch. If that axe had come just one more inch through the door, And she quickly flings herself to him, hugging him and kissing him and asking, "Are you hurt? Are you injured?" And he's like, "I'm all right. I didn't mean to frighten you." And she's like, "Truly? You're not hurt in any way?" And he's like, "Completely unhurt. Suddenly she completely slaps him, and his head feels like a hammer hit an anvil, and she says, "You great hairy lummox, I thought you were dead. I was afraid it killed you. I thought..." And she slaps him again, but he catches her arm and quietly says, "Please don't do that again." She struggles to pull her hand free, but he easily holds it in place, thinking, compared to swinging a hammer at a forge, this is pretty easy. And she just says, "I could have helped you. You had no right." And he interrupts her, saying, "I had every right. You couldn't have helped, and if you'd stayed, we'd both be dead. I couldn't have fought the way I needed to, and kept you safe. I know you hate the words being safe. I'll try my best not to treat you like porcelain, but if you ask me to watch you die, I will tie you like a lamb for market and send you off to Mistress Luwin. She won't stand for any of that nonsense." And Fail, instead of continuing the argument, laughs. You would too, wouldn't you? Don't think you would not dance with the Dark One if you tried, though. And Perrin's like, "What?" In his head, he's like, "What?" He couldn't see any difference between what he just said and what he said before, but she got angry at the other time he said it, and this time she's like looking at him fondly. Even if she did threaten to kill him. And she does carry a lot of knives, so he's like, She hears her mumbling under her breath and just makes out the word "hairy ox." And he promised himself he'll shave every last whisker of that fool beard. But then she says out loud, "The axe. That was the dragon reborn trying to kill us, wasn't it?" And Perrin says it must have been Rand. "Not trying to kill us, though. Not him." And she kind of smiles and says, "If he wasn't trying this time, I hope he never does." And Perrin's like, "I don't know what he was doing, but I'll tell him to stop it right now." They walk away with the axe still stuck in the door. We switch over to Mat's point of view. He's in a very fancy coat, gambling with a few young nobles who are there drinking and throwing around gold. He's thinking about Tom, because Tom seems to be settling into the Stone of Tear pretty well. Mat has a habit of winning when he gambles, to the point where it's hard to get people to gamble with him even. And he can see that these young lords are getting tired of losing. And so Mat tries to distract him and tells a story. And I think, wife, you will enjoy this story. He says, "Ruark, one of the clan chiefs of the Aiel, said if I wanted to get along with the maidens, I should ask them how to play Maiden's Kiss." The maidens being the maidens of the spear, who are the Aiel warrior sept. He said, and then Mat says, "Ruark said that was the best way to get to know them. I mean, it sounded like one of the kissing games back home. But I didn't know Ruark was a man to play tricks. So I went along to Bane and Chaiad, as dumb as a bull goose fool, and asked them to show me Maiden's Kiss. And I should have suspected something was up by the fact that they had wide smiles blooming on their faces like cats who had been asked to dance by a mouse. Before I knew what was happening, I had a fistful of spears around my neck like a collar. I could have shaved myself with a sneeze." The nobles start laughing like crazy as they start to gamble again. And he says, Bane, laughing, said she had never heard of a man actually asking to play Maiden's Kiss. And then Mat says, "Each of the girls took a kiss, that's all. If she thought it was a good kiss, they eased up on the spears. If not, they pushed the spears in your throat a little harder, to encourage, you might say." And that was all, and Mat kind of smiles and he tells the nobles, "I'll tell you this, I got nicked less than I do shaving." And everyone starts laughing. The other nobles, after the laughter dies down, one of them's like savages, ignorant savages living in caves out in the waste. And then another one's like, at least they served the Lord Dragon. I mean, they only lost 100 Aiel, but the defenders of the stone they were fighting lost 1,000. And then they turn to Mat and say, "You'll speak to the Lord Dragon, won't you, Mat?" And Mat's like, "About what?" Because Mat realized these Terrans, people of Tyr, know that Mat grew up with Rand, and they seem to think he's very buddy-buddy. And the guy is like, "Oh, about his proclamation, his last one, where he said commoners have the right to call lords before a judge. Who ever heard of a lord being summoned for a peasant?" And Mat kind of angrily, quietly says, "It would be a shame if you were tried and judged just for having your way with a fisherman's daughter, whatever she wanted, or for having some farmer beaten for splashing mud on your cloak." Most of the nobles catch his mood and shut up, but the one that was talking seems to take it as an agreement, not catching the sinister undertones of Mat's tone, and says, "Exactly! It wouldn't come to that, of course, though. A lord being tried by a judge? Of course not. Besides, no fishermen's daughters. They smell of fish, you see, however you have 'em washed. A plump farm girl is best." And Mat's just like, "I'm here to gamble, not to listen to this fool." One of the nobles asks, "Do we have to talk about commoners? What about Lord Astoral's daughters?" He asks the guy that was saying all this crap. "Have you decided which one you'll marry?" And the guy is like, "What? Oh, I'll flip a coin, I guess. One of them has a few more pretty maids I could have fun with, too, so maybe I'll pick her." And Mat's just like, he takes like a long swig of wine just to stop himself from smacking the dude in his face. Then the nobles start talking about what Rand is planning to do, and they think that Rand is going to hold Kalandor and lead the armies of Tyr to Ilion, a neighboring country, to control them and dominate them, take them over. Because Tyr and Ilion hate each other. They get dealt more cards, and Rand gets basically a royal flush equivalent. And he's like, the light burned my bones to ash if I'm not lucky. And one of the lords yells, there! You can't deny it this time. That was the old tongue. Something about burning and bones. And Matt's like, swears inside his head, and he's like, dang it, I spoke in the old tongue again. Matt doesn't even remember the words he actually said out loud. It's like a string of gibberish, but it seems like he should understand. But he doesn't really know why. He has all these holes in his memory, and how is he talking a language he never learned? But he's just like, keep gambling. But then he looks down at his cards, and he sees one of the cards, a man with a sword, basically. The card stabs a blade into the back of his hand. He yells and flings the cards away, and the air seems to be thick like honey, and everything moves as if slowly. The cards grow larger and larger, the shapes within them, the beings coming out of the cards. Matt reaches for a dagger in his sleeve and hurls it straight at the heart of the creatures, multiple ones. And suddenly, the world lurched back to normal, and he lands on his side. The nobles essentially run away, done gambling for the night. And Matt thinks to himself, burn you, Rand. If you go mad, leave me out of it. And he stalks out of the room. Then, finally, we go to Rand's point of view. Rand has a dream of Moiraine and the Amyrlin Seat trying to put a leash on him while the Forsaken and a bunch of dark friends are in the darkness around. Moiraine's afraid. He then switches to another dream, and he's in a woods where Min and Elain are undressing, and they ask if he wants to go swimming with them. Egwene appears and then leaves, angry at him for being with two of her friends. But Min and Elain call to him again, and he kind of just scratches his face happy. But he looks at his hand and sees where the heron is branded on his palm, white bones shown through the gaps. Rand wakes up. His side is burning, the old wound that he took at Falme that no Aes Sedai has managed to heal, still tender even after half a year. But he thinks to himself, I'm not rotting yet. And I'm not mad either. Not yet. And he feels the urge to laugh at that thought, but wonders if that means he's a little mad already. Thinking to his dream about two girls, Min and Elain, especially dreaming of them like that, naked and wanting to swim with him, well, he thinks if that wasn't madness, it was definitely foolishness. Besides, I was promised to Egwene, but Egwene surely knows we can't marry now. Who can marry someone knowing the man only had a few years to live before he went insane, before he began to rot alive? He jumps up then, hearing someone in his room, and he channels a sword of flames in his hand, and it's a woman. She has beautiful black hair, and she's wearing a robe that really emphasized more than it actually hid. It was Berelain, ruler of the city-state of Mayene. She went into his room. And she kinda sultrily says, I'm unarmed, my lord dragon. I submit myself to your search if you doubt me. And Rand asks, how did you get in here? There's Aiel guarding my door. And she's like, oh, they just let me in when I said I'd been summoned by the lord dragon. And he's like, summoned? I didn't summon anybody. And then he corrects himself because he realizes he's basically talking to a queen. And he's like, my lady, why would I summon you at this time of night? And he notices how her robe is clinging to her skin, emphasizing her body again. And she's like, she can't mean, can she? Light, I've never said two words to her before. And she's like, you're a long way from home like me. The nights seem especially lonely. And Rand just says, tomorrow I'll be happy to talk to you. But during the day, people surround you, petitioners, high lords. Aiel, and she shivers. The Aiel frighten me, and I don't like Terran lords of any sort. And Rand just thinks to himself, burn me, she's in a strange man's bed in the middle of the night, half dressed, and I'm the one who's jumpy as a cat in a dog run. And then he says, it would be better if you returned to your own bedchamber, my lady. It is really too late for talking. Tomorrow, in daylight. And she's like, we're not so formal and stuffy in Mayene. And then Rand says, my lady, I'm promised to Egwene Elvire. And she says, you mean the Aes Sedai, my lord dragon? If she even is one, she's quite young to wear the ring and the shawl. I don't mean to come between you. Marry her if she's Green Ajah. I'd never aspire to wed the Dragon Reborn himself. But, do you mind? May I call you Rand? And Rand says out loud, it's time for you to go, my lady. And she says, I can feel your eyes on me, Rand. I'm no village girl tied to her mother's apron. I know what you want. Do you think I'm made of stone, woman? And she jumps at his loud roar, but almost as quickly comes across the carpet towards him, taking control of herself. Your arms look as strong as stone. If you think you must be harsh with me, then be harsh as long as you hold me. And she touches his face, and without thinking, he channels flows of the one power, and suddenly she was staggering back as if a wall of air pushed against her. And Rand realizes it was air. You see, he does things with the one power without knowing what he was doing more often than he does. But at least once he has done the thing that he can't recognize, he can usually remember how to do it again. And then Rand tied off the flow. That's the only term he could think of to call what he did, so that he no longer had to maintain this wall of air between by channeling the one power more. And he looks at it for a while until he's sure he could do it again. And Berelain, basically like a mime against a wall, is touching the prison of air that she can't go through. And Rand says, much as I regret it, we will not speak again except in public, my lady. And he realizes he did regret it. She is beautiful. But then says out loud, in fact, it's best if you arrange your journey to Mayene as soon as possible. Tyr will not trouble Mayene again, you have my word. And he realizes, well, that promise is only as good as he's alive. But then she says, I did not mean to offend. Forgive me, I've handled this badly. In my country, a woman may speak her mind to a man freely, or he to her. Rand, you must know you're a handsome man, tall and strong. I would be the one made of stone if I didn't see it and admire. Please do not send me away from you. I will beg it if you wish. And she kneels smoothly. And she says again, please, Rand? And Rand says, I am flattered, my lady, but it would not be fair to you. I cannot give you what you deserve. Suddenly, Berelain's eyes stare past him, going huge, eyes like teacups. And Rand turns around, seeing a yellow-red sword flashing back into his own hands, and across the room, one of his body-length mirrors threw his reflection back at him. A tall man with red hair and gray eyes, wearing only his underwear, holding a sword carved of fire, and that reflection stepped out of the mirror onto the carpet. And Rand thinks, I have gone mad. No, she saw it. It's real. Rand goes over and slashes with his fire sword, breaking the image crawling through the mirror. Desperately, he stabbed the mirror as the glass shattered into pieces, and he hears a scream inside his head, his own voice screaming, fading. Suddenly, every mirror in the room exploded silently, fountaining glass across the carpet, and the scream in his head echoed again and again, sending shivers down his spine. It was his voice, He could hardly believe it was not himself who had made the sounds, because the sounds, even though they were his voice, were not coming from him. He turns around to see another figure of himself, and Rand realizes he's not alone. 2 more reflections had escaped from mirrors before he smashed them, and now there are 3 duplicates, as the other one is not downed, I guess. Rand used every bit of training Lan gave him in their daily sword practices. Him verse 3. His wound in his side tore open, adding its flow of blood to stain his small clothes, which are underwear, in red. They had his same skill as well as his face. He felt his strength going. His blade slipped past one of his opponents and slashed across the face just below the eyes. But he couldn't help but wince. It was his face. He managed to get some strikes, and wonders, can anything kill them? Because all 3 seemed to be bleeding, but it didn't even seem to slow them down, as he was slowing down from cuts he's received. But he thinks, no, if they're bleeding, they can be hurt. They must. Rand jumps onto the bed to get the high ground, as Obi-Wan taught him. And he rolls along it. One of the mirror images climbed onto the bed as well as the others surround. Suddenly, Rand feels a stab in his hand. An image of himself, about 6 inches tall, had stabbed him with a tiny sword. He grabbed the figure, and it writhed in his grip. Suddenly, the figure burst like a bubble, and he felt something flow into him, a small portion of his strength, as if the images had taken some of it. He lifted his head and found the reflections were gone. Well, the small ones anyway. The 3 large ones were still there. But they were more cautious now. And he realized from their reactions something linked these reflections together. So if he could absorb them like he did the small one, perhaps he could destroy all 3. But he thinks to himself, I don't know the way. How did I do it? What did I do? And then he thinks to himself, okay, they're reflections. But how much are they reflections? And then praying to himself that he's not being a fool, because if he is, he'll be a dead one, he let his sword made of fire vanish. But as soon as he did so, the swords in his reflections also vanished. Confusion was on all of their faces, and they leaped for him, crashing to the floor in a grappling tangle. But as they tackle him, he remembers and he absorbs them all, feeling sick as he does it, but realizing strength is returning to him as he does. As he recovers, he realizes he hasn't heard a sound from Berelain. Fearing to see her dead, he turns and sees she's still kneeling there, behind the wall of air. She asks, which one? And she can't even finish her sentence, but he says, I am the only one there is, gently. The one you were treating as if you were betrothed. He meant that to be kind of a joke to make her smile a little bit, but she says, bending forward, putting her face to the floor, I apologize humbly for having grievously offended you, Lord Dragon. I beg you forget my offense and forgive. I will not bother you again, I swear it, my Lord Dragon. On my mother's name and under the light, I swear it. And Rand says, after loosening the wall of air, there's nothing to forgive. Go as you wish. And she says, I will send the Aiel in to you if you wish. I could send for one of the Aes Sedai. And he says, thank you, but no. I'd appreciate it if you told no one what happened here. I will do what needs to be done. And she leaves. And Rand thinks to himself, in a moment he'll send for Moraine to heal his wounds. In a moment he'll speak to the Aiel outside and become the dragon reborn again. But for now, for just one moment, he only wanted to sit and remember a shepherd named Rand al'Thor. So those 2 chapters took a very long time. A lot of the chapters in this book I'll be able to get through very quickly, but I really want to, get that intro going a little bit. So you'll have to forgive me for 2 chapters taking this long. But they're so cool of chapters, All right, we're gonna still do chapter 3, which is titled Reflection. Perrin goes to see Rand in his room asking about the axe, but they come across a High Lord and his two guards staring at Rand's chambers. As Rand gets near, Berelain appears, basically running as fast as she can from Rand's room, and Perrin smells the fear on her. Fael decides to leave since she doesn't know the dragon, and Rand goes in. The defenders of the stone guarding Rand's door let him pass, but the Aiel stop him for a minute. Bane and Chaiad are at the door, the two spear sisters, and Perrin says, "I'm going in. I don't have time to argue with you, but I'm going in." And gently, he picks up Bane and sets her to the side. Bane takes her spear away from his throat and grins at it and asks, "Would you like to learn a game called Maiden's Kiss, Perrin? You might play well, I think. You could learn something." And everyone starts laughing, and he's like, taking a deep breath. "Well, they don't have their faces veiled, so they're not gonna kill me." And he just says, "Another time, perhaps." And they all grin even more, as if there was something even more amusing about that answer. He walks inside and sees all the furniture destroyed and Rand bloody, holding Callandor across his knee, and he yells back at the Aiel, "Get Moiraine! Tell her to hurry!" And Rand just tells him to shut the door. Perrin asks Rand what he did, but Rand just says it was one of the Forsaken. They wonder if Mat encountered this too, since it seemed whatever happened seemed to happen to both Perrin and Rand, but Rand doesn't know. And honestly, he doesn't even seem that concerned. Rhuarc, one of the Aiel clan chiefs, came into the room because Berelain told him what happened. And then Moiraine quickly follows him, accompanied by Lan. The Aes Sedai say, "Rand, hold Saidin because it'll give you strength, because healing takes energy away from the person being healed." Rand tries to grasp Saidin, but he can't do so, and so she just heals him regularly and says this could result in you being bedridden for the next day or two. She heals everything important with the exception of the wound on his side, which the one power doesn't seem to affect. Rand tells Moiraine one of the Forsaken is here. "I'm gonna find him," and Moiraine says, "It's not one of the Forsaken. This was too simple." And Rand's like, "No more riddles. If not them, then who or what?" And Moiraine explains, as the seals holding the Dark One's prison weaken, there is a miasma that will escape even while he's held, like bubbles rising from things rotting at the bottom of a pond. These bubbles will drift through the pattern until they attach to a thread and burst. And Perrin yells, "Light! You mean what happened to Rand is going to happen to everybody?" And Moiraine's like, "Not to everyone. Not yet, at least. I think there will only be a few bubbles for now. At least for now, though. Later, who can say? But just as ta'veren bend other threads in the pattern around them, I think ta'veren will tend to attract these bubbles more than others." Rand finally asks about Mat, and Rhuarc says, "He's well. I saw him on my way here." Bane and Chaiad come into the room holding towels and water, planning to wash Rand. And Moiraine says, "Your time's running out, Rand. The Lords of Tyr are getting used to you, and soon they're going to put an arrow in your back or poison your food, or another bubble of evil is going to slide along the pattern to you." And he says, "Don't try to harry me, Moiraine. I won't run for you either." But she says, "Choose your way soon, and this time inform me what you mean to do. I can't help you if you refuse to accept it." And Rand says, "Your help? I'll take your help, but I will decide when, not you." And he tells them all to go away because he needs to sleep. Bane and Chaiad don't move, and Rand's like, "Go away, just put down the bucket and go away." And Chaiad says, very cheerfully, "If you can stand up, we will. Just stand." Rand is not able to stand. Perrin then looks over at Rhuarc as they walk away, and he's like, You don't treat Rand like the Terrans do. You don't bow and scrape to him. I don't even think you've called him Lord Dragon." And Rhuarc says, The Dragon Reborn is a Wetlander prophecy. Our prophecy revolves around he who comes with the dawn. And Perrin's like, I thought those were the same thing. Why else would you have come here? You even say you're the people of the dragon. And Rhuarc says, in your prophecies, the fall of the stone and Kalimdor proclaim the dragon has been reborn. But our prophecy only says the stone must fall before he who comes with the dawn appears to take us back to what was ours. They could be the same man, but if they are, there are things Rand has to do to prove it. Perrin asks, what? And Rhuarc just responds, if he's the one, he will know and do them. If he doesn't, our search will go on. Perrin then asks, and if he isn't the one you search for, what then, Rhuarc? Sleep well and safely, Perrin. And Rhuarc's boots make no sound on the marble as he walks away. And Rand thinks to himself, there's too much risk here. I need to make sure Faile leaves. She had to go, and without Perrin. Chapter 4 is titled Strings. It goes to Tom's perspective, and he's doing some Das Daimir, some of the great game, forging letters from different High Lords to make them suspicious of one another and stuff, to try to help Rand. And he gets a knock on his door, and it's Mat. And Mat's like, did anything weird happen? And Tom's like what? And Mat tells him the story of what happened and asks, and says, I'm leaving. Will you come with me? And Tom is like, listen, you should at least stay until morning before leaving. Like, it's too dark, it's too late. And Mat's like, Mat this whole time is thinking to himself, I keep trying to leave and something keeps holding me here, like not letting me. And Tom is like, just stay, let's play a game of stones and calm down. And Mat is like, all right, I'll leave in the morning, but definitely in the morning. And he sits down to play the game with Tom. Chapter 5 is titled Questioners. We go to Egwene's perspective, and Egwene is sitting in the Stone of Tear with Nynaeve and Aviendha. If you remember, Aviendha is the Aiel woman who saved them back in the previous book. And the girls are in a room with two of the Blackjaw sisters, Joya and Amiko. Both women are shielded. Joya is shielded. She cannot touch the source. But they didn't shield, I might say it two different ways, Amiko or Amiko, or Amiko. But Amiko doesn't need a shield because she has been stilled by her previous fighting. They are both deafened by flows of air and unable to talk, but Amiko is ungagged by the girls, and they ask her about stories, about what they're doing and where they're planning to go. Amiko keeps talking about how they're after something in Tanchico, another city, and there's something there that the Black Ajah wants. And so they're like, okay, fine. They tie her up again with flows of air and untie Joya. And Joya says, no, what we're trying to do is break Mazrim Taim, one of the false dragons. You see, Mazrim Taim has been captured by the Red Ajah, and he's currently on his way to the tower to be gentled. But we want to free him, proclaim him the Dragon Reborn, and have him destroy the world in place of Rand. Because apparently their plan is, after that happens, for Rand al'Thor to be blamed for the things Taim does. Then the countries would unite against him, and he would be destroyed. Tarmangaiden, the last battle, would arrive, and the Dark One would win with no dragon to fight. Suddenly, Moiraine comes in with a face that looks like thunder, and Elayne quickly behind. Chapter 6 is titled Doorways. Damn, this chapter summary is like 5 times longer than the last one. I'll see what I can do. But you'll like parts of this one. Joya, one of the Black Ajah girls, keeps taunting Egwene and Nynaeve But as soon as Moraine walks in, Moraine is clearly in control of the situation, and they are very scared of her. She says these girls are going to be taken to Tar-Valon in 4 days, and you will be taken to the traitor's court unless you come up with something more valuable to tell us. And Amiko is like terrified. Nynaeve gets all mad that Moraine's not giving him more time to question the two girls. And Moraine just says, I will give you a lesson about holding your tongue if you don't be quiet. And Elaine thinks to herself, Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve are definitely much stronger than Moraine with the one power, but there's things Moraine does that are amazing. She clearly has significantly more knowledge and ability at this time than the three girls do right now. Elaine looks upset, and Egwene is asking about why, and Elaine just says Berelain was in Rand's bedchamber. And Elaine and Moraine look at Egwene sadly, and Egwene just says, I love him, but like a brother, and you like a sister. And she realizes, and she says, Elaine, I wish you well of him, realizing that it seems Elaine has developed feelings for Rand as well. And Elaine's eyes just widen, and she smiles and hugs Egwene and says, Thank you. I love you too, sister. Oh, thank you. So this means that Egwene has finally accepted she will never marry Rand, but Rand could potentially be with Elaine, because Elaine seems to be in love. And Egwene asks Moraine, have you ever been in love, Moraine? And Moraine just stares at them and finally says, I wager I know the face of the man I will marry better than either of you knows that of your future husband. And Egwene's like, and Elaine's like, who? And then Moraine just kind of looks like she wishes she hadn't said anything. She's like, don't read too much into a few words. And then she looks a little bit at Nynaeve and just says, should I ever choose a man, it won't be Lan. That much I'll say. And it seemed like that was just said for Nynaeve's benefit, because Moraine clearly understands that Nynaeve likes Lan. Moraine tells the four girls, because Aviendha is there, that she wishes Rand would just go to Ilion after Samael, because remember, Samael is running Ilion in the shadows that we found out in the last book. And she's like, I wish Rand would go there and start a war against Ilion to take him out, because Rand's not doing anything, and the Forsaken are going to see him not doing anything as weakness, and they are going to attack. But all Rand does all day long is just read through the prophecies of the dragon, trying to read them to tell him what to do. And he gets all these different translations of it, trying to figure something out, but all he's doing at the end of the day is reading books. He's not doing anything, and she's getting very frustrated. And Egwene and Elaine are finally like, then what are we going to do? What are you going to do, Moraine? And Moraine tells them, under the Stone of Tyr there is a great many Ter Angriel. One of them is a twisted doorway, an arch, if you will. I may step through it. And Elaine realizes Moraine does not seem excited by this idea. And Moraine explains what it does. It gives answers. When you step through the arch, you are allowed to ask 3 questions, and you will receive 3 answers, each one true, about the past, present, or future. And Egwene and Nynaeve get excited. Like, you could ask whether these girls are telling the truth, or where Liandrin is, or who the Black Ajah members are. And she's like, you rush blindly where 100 warders would tread warily. Why do you think I haven't stepped through? I could have asked days ago what Rand has to do to survive and triumph over the Dark One, or how can he defeat the Forsaken in the Dark One, or how he can learn to control the power or hold off madness. But there are rules and dangers. The first, no one may step through more than once. You may ask 3 questions, but you must ask all 3 and hear the answers before you leave. Frivolous questions are punished, but it also seems that what is serious for one person could be considered frivolous from another. Secondly, questions touching the shadow have dire consequences. If you ask about the Black Ajah, you could be returned dead, or come out a mad woman if you came out at all. And Rand, well, I'm not even sure if it's possible to ask a question about the Dragon Reborn that doesn't touch the shadow. You see, sometimes there's reasons for caution. And they're like, how do they have all this? How do you even know? And Moiraine's like, well, these guys, the Lords of Tyr stopped collecting ter'angreal like 300 years ago. But before that, the Mayene, the Firsts of Mayene, which is now Berlin, her country had it. And they let Aes Sedai study it. And Moiraine says, you 3 should concentrate on Tanchico. I've already sent letters to the Amyrlin, reminding her of what's going on. Elaine then talks to Egwene about, did you mean what you said about Rand and I? And she also says, I've been wondering about the jokes Min kept making before about how we're gonna have to share Rand. And then Elaine's also like, my mother will never approve of him. And Egwene's like, yes, I meant it. And don't even worry about your mother. In fact, the rumors say she's having an affair with someone named Lord Gabriel right now, so she's not one to judge. And then Nynaeve comes in and is like, even knowing what Rand will become, you're okay with going after him? And she's like, it doesn't matter. I think I love him regardless. And Nynaeve is actually happy with that response and says, I just wanted to be sure. And she's actually being pretty supportive. But then Nynaeve asks, so what are you going to do to Berelain? And Elaine's like, I don't even think, I don't know. And the real problem, though, is that I don't even think Rand knows I exist. And then she gets nervous that the girls are going to think she's being silly talking about a boy when the Black Ajah are clearly more important. But then Nynaeve's like, Rand's not the only one who could die the next year or month. We might too. If you sit and wish for what you want, you might not see it. And so Elaine took it as she's not being silly. She should go for what she wants. And she thinks to herself, oh, what were we to do? The only other thing I'll talk about is when they were talking about Rand reading the prophecies, they did share a section of prophecy. And it is a very important one, so I am going to read it. It's very short. The prophecy that Rand keeps looking at right now is as follows. Power of the shadow made human flesh, wakened to turmoil, strife, and ruin. The reborn one, marked and bleeding, dances the sword in dreams and mist, chains the shadow sworn to his will, from the city, lost and forsaken, leads the spears to war once more, breaks the spears and makes them see truth long hidden in the ancient dream. We don't know what any of that means, really. But that is the end of the chapter.